I represented 500 people while dealing with a child with cancer, and I thought that I had experienced the hardest thing that I would ever have to in life.
Hmm.
And when I got into entrepreneurship, business is way harder than doing that. Like, I thought that I would have nerves of steel after being able to survive that part of my life. And boy, was I wrong.
Our guest today is a tenacious visionary. He's the founder and CEO of Coffee Junkiez and Pizza Junkiez, as well as the CEO of Double J Franchising, Scared Rabbit Marketing, and also Vickers Graphics and Custom Apparel. I'm having an anxiety attack trying to imagine how he juggles all of these companies at one time. And it does take an obsessed entrepreneur, and that's exactly what he is, with massive dreams and goals. Welcome to the show, Jasan Julius.
Mike, thanks a lot for having me.
Man, I'm excited. We have not met before, so this is organic. Everybody's tuning in right now, either on Apple, Spotify, whatever app they want to choose to listen to, or on YouTube, and they're getting to see us engage here for the first time. So I'm super excited to have you. Thank you for being here, brother.
No, absolutely. Thanks for that's what I said. The intro itself, it almost gives me a little bit of anxiety just thinking about juggling it all myself.
Yeah, when you're like, oh yeah, I am doing all five
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
same time. Yeah, that's cool. I had to count them out. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a handful,
Yep.
literally. So no, I appreciate you being here. I know you're very busy. I know you're out there promoting your businesses, rightfully so, and you're doing a great job with it. So I'm glad I could get you sitting still for about a half hour to 45 minutes today to do this. If anyone wants to tune in and actually, connect with Jasan, you can do that on Instagram. That's where he spends a lot of time. It's at Jasan Julius, and Jasan has the two A's, and it's Jasan Julius. Don't worry about spelling it anyway. I'm going to make it clickable in the show notes. Everything will be easy to connect. His websites will be listed there as well. So let's dive right in. You ready?
Absolutely.
Cool, brother. So one thing this interview is not just for the audience. That's the primary focus. Every time I ask a question, it's for the benefit of the audience. But this one's a little bit for me. I was kind of wondering, as an entrepreneur myself, what that light bulb moment looked like for you when you realized or thought, hey, I'm going to actually create a double-headed monster here, the coffee shop and pizza shop in one. I mean, coffee and pizza doesn't necessarily go together, but it seems to work. You're extremely successful. So why the two together?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm a consummate tester. I mean, I don't come from a highly educated background, so I mean, about like anybody, it was always you don't know what you're talking about. I know what I'm talking about. And then, I mean, my light bulb moment on that end of it was to realize that I didn't know half of what I thought I knew, but I was always willing to go out and test. So, I mean, I created Coffee Junkiez in 2005. And then I created Pizza Junkiez in a test kitchen in 2014. And it was Pizza Junkiez was, I wanted to take the 8 years worth of entrepreneurial lessons and apply it to another brand. And the Pizza Junkiez got off the ground so quickly that within the first 6 months of getting it off the ground, that was when that light bulb went off. I wonder what this would look like under the same roof. And even my own team gave me a bunch of kickback about it. They were really doubtful. But I had the facility of the main operation and the square footage, and we're going to do this and we're going to find out whether this works. And then it took about 6 months to get them to work with each other and
To buy
figure
in
out
a
which
little bit,
side.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's ballsy because like you had something already going well and you're going to alter it. And a lot of times it's like that could be a train wreck. It's like when things are going well, it's like you don't kind of get in the way of its momentum. And you're like, okay, well, we can go along with the momentum because now you have Pizza Junkiez you want to add to the kind of the family. And I think it's cool. And the fact that you use Junkies in there and it's got the unique spelling, the IEZ ending.
Mhm.
It's catchy, and you know right away that the two are connected. When you see Coffee Junkiez and Pizza Junkiez, you would go, "Oh, those are the kind of under the same roof." And then you're like, "Yeah, literally." Okay, you could drive through, get your coffee, and come in and get a slice, or whatever. Eat lunch, hop back in the car, and before you get out of the parking lot, you circle around the building because coffee is drive through, but the pizza is a sit down. Correct?
Yeah, no, and that's, I mean, catering, delivery, all of those things. But that, I mean, as an entrepreneur and I guess as a visionary, the business side of it is what made sense in my brain. When I started thinking about how they would function with each other, it was like a pizza doesn't intrude on coffee in the morning. They merge well in the afternoon, and the pizza extends well into the late night, which allows me to keep the coffee services open. So it was from the business perspective that monetarily it made sense. I just wondered if I could pull it off, and there was only one way to find out whether I could pull it off. And yeah, you
Yeah.
can innovate in either industry, but yeah, I think the originality comes with I don't believe anybody's actually tried to put a coffee shop and a pizza place under one roof.
Yeah. Well, that's it, man. It's what we were joking about, the spelling of your name. You were unique from day one when your mom spelled it with the two A's. So, and I like that you came out and you just with confidence of, look, I'm not highly educated, right? You're a high school dropout. I know I did a little homework on you, and that's cool. Like, I want people to remember that that's not what defines you. It's important if someone needs a degree or wants to pursue something, go and do that. We're not shooting down college or even a high school diploma, but that didn't, because you didn't have it, you didn't say I'm disqualified from the rest of my life. You kept
No,
going.
I
Yeah.
could, because I completely agree with you. It's not that I'm not going to badmouth school or college at all. I mean, when you need to specialize in something like nobody's going to operate on me and tell me that they were a high school dropout. I mean, I'm
Right.
like, there is
Yeah.
definitely need for college out there, but not when entrepreneurship is very much about ongoing life education, and the information is out there. You just got to be willing to seek it.
Not too shabby, guys, when you look at Jason's success for a high school dropout. He's an Indiana boy. Actually, one of our editors on our team, Todd, is from Indiana. So, and I got some family out that way. So I'm in Buffalo, New York. We got kind of a similar thing going on. It's not too different from the Indiana lifestyle. So I got an appreciation for it. I'm just curious to keep going on the coffee and pizza junkies. How many locations do you plan on opening? Like, where are you at now, and what's the big vision for that?
Well, right now, I mean, I've got three operations open, and I mean, at a time before I created Pizza Junkies, I had seven on Coffee Junkies operations, but that was before the 0809 recession, and sometimes you got to take a step backwards to take a step forwards. But in my head, in my brain, I'm looking at 2,500 operations, because it's just not hard to do the math of 50 operations in 50 states. And the first day that I opened up the first Coffee Junkies, in my brain, it's a national brand. It's just that work in progress, getting up every day and moving towards it. And I had a vision of 50 stores in the first 5 years, and I look back on that at the beginning of my journey, and I laugh about that because I mean, it's a steep learning curve, and there's a lot to learn to be successful in entrepreneurship, especially in the food and beverage space. But so no, right now there's three operations, but it will be a continual journey where I'm building something that will outlive me, and the growth is just exponential possibilities.
Yeah. Well, I think something I've learned myself, and I've learned it in whether it's mastermind groups, books I've read, just meeting with other great business owners that I admire. A lot of times it's master the thing that's right in front of you, right?
Mhm.
Because if I had the shiny object syndrome really early as an entrepreneur. I'm like, I'm doing my own thing, and I want to do this, and I want to offer that. And we could do this. We could do it this way. We can also try it this way. And it's like after several months of that, you end up asking yourself, what am I great at? If I had to do a
Mhm.
magic trick right now and wow the audience, what is it? And so rather than you have 50 in the first 5 years, that could have been you weren't maybe ready for that size ship yet at the wheel, right? And what could happen with a guy like you or we just go so fast. We just say we're gonna go, we're gonna keep moving, and then what ends up happening is if we have to turn that steamship, it's all of a sudden where it can end up. Where when you're in a speedboat, yeah, you could pivot a little bit more. I got three operations, got a few employees behind you in the back. We're gonna go this way right now. You can get weave through the recession where these big companies, they're one move for them takes 5 years to implement, so they're going to be gone, right? So it ended up kind of helping you out.
Yeah, they don't get me wrong. I mean, I've never been lacking in confidence, but the first operation got off to a pretty quick, successful start, and I think that might have been something that held me back because I thought that it got off to such a quick start that okay, this is easier than what I had read
Hmm.
about. only to find out, no, that it's a lot harder. And I preach it now that for anybody that thinks business is easy, I mean, it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. And
if it looks easy, it just means, yeah, I just don't mean to interrupt you, but if it looks easy, it means that everybody in that operation's running really smoothly. Just like a
yeah,
sports team who's winning 50-0. It's not easy. They're just all on this firing on all cylinders at the same time.
well, and the thing is that my whole thing is that I feel like one, connectivity is more important than anything else, and I'm good at serving people. And where my fatal flaw in the beginning was that I was really good at building a team and motivating a team to move forward, but I was stuck on the team itself, and I didn't systemize the way that I should have in the beginning times. And then slowly but surely, teams start to fall apart. So you're always rebuilding your team, but I started to gain traction when I started rebuilding teams around systems. And that was one of my early failures, is that had I invested more in developing the systems earlier on, I would have gotten further faster.
Yeah, I could relate to that too. Systems, processes, it's all the stuff that kind of seems boring when you have to go through it, but it's so integral to your success, because once a system works, you can replicate it. But if you get somehow like early success like you did, but you probably couldn't even articulate all the pieces that went into making you successful when it was really early on, that if you
Yeah.
wanted to create a second, third, 50th location, it's like, what's the recipe? It's not so easy to pinpoint and to define it. I do have kind of a follow-up question, something I thought was interesting. I was looking at coffee junkies, brother. I am a coffee junkie, okay? I drink this stuff all the way from the time I wake up until midnight. I know my doctor wouldn't tell me that's a good idea, but I do. I'm a coffee junkie. I appreciate it. I'm looking at your site and your offerings that you have, and there's a lot that you're doing with coffee junkies. And there was like smoothies and all kinds of different flavors. Everything had like 12 or more flavors. It was all crazy, but there was one original coffee and you didn't mess with it. I thought that was cool. Can you speak to why you chose to do that?
If we're talking about the Hoosier Brew, I
Yeah, it
mean,
was like you have one kind of coffee, right? Yeah, the main
well,
house
and
brew or whatever. Who's your
yeah,
brew?
I mean, because the thing is I spent almost 14 years at Chrysler before I started the business. And
Mhm.
one of the biggest things that I took away from Chrysler was that waste kills all. Okay, so when you are offering drip coffees, you have to pre-make the drip coffees. Then, of course, if you don't sell through them at the end of the day, well, then it's waste. You're dumping it out. You've lost it. So day one, it was I'm specializing in espresso so that I can make everything by the cup where there's no waste in the operation. And I'm offering one drip coffee so that at the end of the day, the only thing that I'm wasting is a couple cups of coffee, but it had to be a really good house coffee. And I'm that black coffee drinker. Like I cannot go a day without my house coffee. I start my day with 3 cups. So in everything that we do, because I say we specialize in non-alcoholic beverages, I love our house coffee. It is a medium roast. And I didn't want to try and copy what the competition was. I wanted to offer something a little bit different. So it's smooth yet flavorful. And then if you want something that's more high octane, well, then we just dump shots of espresso in on top of it, and that bolds it up.
Amen to that. Yeah, I started drinking coffee. You're gonna laugh. I had to be probably even younger than 10 years old. Okay. Not on a regular basis, but when Italian family gets together, there's all kinds of Italian cookies and everything. And then everybody's drinking coffee. And we got our hands, I'm the youngest of three. My older brother started drinking coffee before I did. We're dumping in, spoonfuls of sugar and, it's milk. It's basically a sugar drink. And
Hmm.
then every year it was less sugar, less milk. Right. And by the time I was like 15, 16 years old, I was drinking black coffee, and now I don't even know what that stuff tastes like anymore. It's just all black coffee. So I like a good medium roast as well. I think you did the right thing there. Again, it's like we talked about earlier. Have that magic trick be real special, and don't
Hmm.
worry about trying to do 78 coffee flavors, right? And you start to lose your identity. So you didn't do that. I thought that's really cool. Um, I'd like to pick your brain in this as a successful entrepreneur. Can you talk about some of your core values that you feel were instilled in you that maybe you helped you become successful? And where did you learn those traits?
Look, everybody has problems in life. But my background is just deep blue collar roots and working, and you work through problems. So the more problems that I encountered, the harder that I worked. And I mean, it's like some people live to work, some people work to live. Working is a deep part of who I am. I feel whole when I'm working. I experience anxiety if I'm standing still. But a lot of that comes back to accountability. Like when I lost my son, I mean, I could have just shrank into a box and just rotted away. But then I thought to myself, well, there are children that lose all of their entire families in a flash. So to me, that was don't be a victim. Things happen and like good things happen to bad things happen to good people, but personal accountability and own your shit for all intents and purposes. They're core values that I preach to all of my people of hold yourself accountable, be open to admitting that you're making your mistakes, put it out there and do everything you can to learn from it. And at the end of the day, as I'm working towards with my own people, trying to elaborate on that, extreme ownership and radical candor are generally the words they hear out of me when it comes to my core values and my principles. Um, because I mean, I'm trying to live life, and part of living life is being responsible for my own actions and my surroundings.
Yeah. I want to unpack a lot of that. First of all, you kind of went to where I was going to go next, which is good. You're leading me right there. You worked for Chrysler. You talked about it. You teased it there for a second. I know you worked there for quite some time. You were in sales. So you're in a corporate sales environment. Um,
No,
and at
actually,
that,
I was a laborer. That I
oh, I
spent
thought, okay. I
yeah
thought
yeah
you were up on sales. Okay.
no
So
10,
you
10
work,
years in labor, and then I became a union rep.
okay, cool. So you're doing that 10 years plus, and then you have twins, you got your two boys,
Mhm.
and one of your sons passes away. And I don't know if you want to share the story, but it sounds like at that moment is when you kind of transitioned from working at Chrysler into being an entrepreneur. I'm kind of wondering how that all ended up. You persevered through the moment, and then you decided to do something even more audacious there. Can you kind of share what the thought process was on in that moment?
Well, and that was the thought. The thought process is exactly it. Like I said, my background is blue collar. So when I went to work at Chrysler, I was just happy to get a good job and run good parts and work in production. Over time, though, it was working in assembly and then production and then the test garage and then fork trucks. Um, but it was working. It was not like heavy, intensive mental brain power. But I got interested in the union, and I became a union rep. Well, 30 days after I was elected, my son was diagnosed with cancer. So 30 days before reelection, he died, and I didn't get reelected. I had spent that entire 3 years representing 500 people in as my business responsibility while dealing with my son and my family and my personal responsibility. And when I didn't get reelected, I had to go back to the floor, and that's where it hit me. I have to do something else because I went from using massive amounts of brain power to function for 3 years to going back to what was muscle memory, what I had been doing for the previous decade, and I felt my brain deteriorating, and I was afraid of the worst that would come out of letting myself just set in that situation. So no, that
Not to
was
mention you're going through a devastating situation with your son passing. Then it kind of feels, I don't want to speak for you, but that situation almost seems like they turn your back a little bit on a guy who's going through some tough thing. Not that they should give it to you out of like sorrow or anything. They shouldn't favor anybody. They should give it to the right man, given that he's the right man for it. But you were already in there and kind of felt like, okay, this is the next step. And then all of a sudden they're bringing it down. So you felt, hey, I need to almost like a rebirth of yourself. Like I got to get creative again and get my energy and my juices flowing again, because otherwise you were regressing there. And so that makes a lot of sense. I was wondering how the two kind of connected there. And so, how old is your son now?
That his brother's 25.
20. So he would be 25 now. Wow.
Yeah, no, and that's I mean, it's weird to think that, I mean, Coffee Junkies is going to be 17 years old here in a couple months. And at this point, yes, I put more time into the business and entrepreneurship than I put into Chrysler, but you hit the nail on the head. I'm not going to deny. I felt betrayed, because I had done a really good job. I had set records and taken care and served my constituents to the best of my ability. But when he died 30 days before re-election, elections are still politics. And I just wasn't up for the actual politics of running in a race. And I got beat. And yeah, it was time for a change because I was walking into a plant and walking into a haze of depression. And then obviously you're walking in with your constituents knowing that you didn't get the votes to keep the job. So you got to move forward.
You know what, man? I learned this through this show. I learned this through, and I always like to give him credit. Ed Milet's the first person who said these words, and it stuck with me. It's that when you change that, the perspective of things happen to you, when you change that into things happen for you, it now gives you the power back. And you can look back and say, you know what? Not getting elected in that actually happened for me. And now it allowed me to create something new. Coffee Junkies, Pizza Junkies, the other 3 businesses you have are all these beautiful things that came out of that adverse situation. Obviously, you want your son back. You do everything to get him back. But that was something that was taken. There was no negotiation there. And then, 25 years later, you look back, you go, you know what, Chrysler, the whole situation kind of was, look at what happened. Look at me now, right? And we don't always see it in the moment. We don't always see it 5 years later. Sometimes it takes more time to develop and look at it. But I'm saying that really for our audience and also for you to think about it if you haven't really thought of it that way yet, of how things happen for you. Because look, man, we're still like, who knows where in this whole pandemic. It's been 2 years now and a couple months that it's been official. And there's still a lot of people highly impacted by this thing. And who would ever say, oh, man, I'm happy that this pandemic happened. Nobody's going to jot around saying that, strut around saying that. So I think, what you can say is like, there's a lot of uncontrollables. I can control me and the surroundings right around me here, my family, my team, business. And something happens, instead of just sulking about it, what can we apply from that knowledge of the situation and move forward? And you're doing that. So we're going to take a quick 2-minute timeout. We got to give some love to our sponsors. We'll be right back with Jason, guys, in 2 quick minutes.
Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you. And that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight. And Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. Hey guys, it's Mike. I'd like to give a proper shout out to Navigator Bookkeeping. Look, for a long time, I ran my business without really understanding the full financial picture. I used my gut and my bank account balance to make decisions, which led to some poor choices and constant stress over my business's finances. I knew something needed to change. At the beginning of 2021, I made a decision that helped pave a more clear path for my business. I started working with Navigator Bookkeeping. Since then, my bookkeeping has been handled for me. I now understand the full financial story of my business, making important financial decisions much easier now, and it helps me plan for where my business is going. I highly recommend giving Navigator Bookkeeping an opportunity to help your business. Check them out at navigatingyourbooks.com. Again, that's navigatingyourbooks.com. It's time to know the full financial story of your business.
All right, guys, we're back in action. We're here with Jasan Julius. Again, you guys can connect with him on social media. He's at Jasan Julius on Instagram. And I have it spelled for you in the show notes, so you can go ahead and click that. You don't have to worry about typing it in. And you guys can connect with Jasan right there. Right before the break, we were talking about the mindset shift of things happening to us to things happening for us. And I'd like Jasan to kind of pick it up and give his feedback on that thought as well.
No, I mean, to kind of segue on that. Look, I mean, I really believe that everything happens for a reason, and you are right where you're supposed to be. And I tell everybody that if I don't have a regret, but I look back and I wish that I had been more conscious and paid more attention to the lessons I was learning in life, because it's all been applicable to the later portions of my life. I mean, being a union rep taught me contract negotiations. Working inside of Chrysler taught me mass manufacturing from the level of raw product through production, through assembly, through quality control, through the movings of the products around. All of that stuff has been applicable to getting into the food and beverage industry. I mean, as a union rep, I was one of the heads of the ergonomics committee. Okay, that plays in heavily to how you're going to have man assignments, how you're going to lay out your workforce inside of an operation. So when I went into the coffee or the pizza industry, I didn't necessarily have a deep background in food and beverage, but I knew a lot about workflow, and I knew a lot about footprinting and about proper heights and repetitive tasks, and making sure that you were setting it up in a manner where your employees were not injuring themselves as they were doing those things. So every piece of my life till now has led to where I am, and I just try and be hyper conscious of living in the moment and absorbing all of the knowledge and information in the moment, because I know I'm going to put it to work for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's so good, man. Guys tuning in right now, gals tuning in right now, go back and listen to that. And I want you to do a quick mental assignment and think, how can I apply what Jasan just said to myself? Because how many times when we're young, most of us start working. I did when I was 15, 16 years old, and all the way through, multiple jobs. I started in retail. I got into sales. I did, customer service. I was a warehouse supervisor at a furniture store. All kinds of these interesting jobs that you have kind of getting through your teens and 20s, and into finally, landing that career, if you will. And people go, "What do you do?" And you have a better answer for it all of a sudden, and try to get there in your early to mid 20s. But when you look back at it all, a lot of times people don't connect the dots to whatever their dreams are, whatever the big moment is they want to get to. They think it's just kind of like almost like school. You just got to get in there, do your homework, and get a grade and get out, right? But what can we do? How can we take the things that we've learned, like you just articulated really well, and apply it? It may not be in the same profession. It may not even be the same kind of job. You're talking about when you were, kind of on the line, the things you learned, right? Working in a distribution center, it helped you. Now you're creating, products, and you have to think about distribution. So you can take your Chrysler knowledge and kind of apply what worked and didn't work to your own business now. But at the time, you're probably not thinking, if I become an entrepreneur, this is going to serve me. Hey, you don't always think about it in the moment, but I want people to go back, reflect on what they've learned. Maybe there's a struggle they're at today, but they're not thinking they have the answer, but they could maybe go back 10 years and find it. That's really good, man. That's got me thinking. I'm going to take some time after this and kind of meditate on that.
Well, but towards what you said, I think too many people say, well, I learned to do something. So they think, or they get in the mindset that the learning phase is past tense. Now they're ready to move forward. Like, learning is a lifelong thing. Like,
It doesn't stop.
and
Yeah.
different than a muscle. Like, if you do not use your brain, and your brain is meant to learn, it will deteriorate over time. So learning is a lifelong lesson. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of that just comes down to perspective. I mean, I think your perspective in life is going to determine a lot of the quality of life that you have, and how much you use your brain to continually learn. It leads to the benefit that you're able to apply it to the next and the next and the next.
Mic drop moment right there. Bam. That's a highlight right there that I'm going to remember, because one of the biggest reasons I love doing the show is because I'm a sponge. I learn so much, right?
Mhm.
And learning almost so much for me, I got to go back and listen to it a second or third time. And I don't always do that immediately. Sometimes I wait several weeks or a month to go back. Hey, what was Jason talking about? Oh yeah, and you're going to hit me again later with that thought you just said. And I think it's so important for people to remember. Yeah, learning is not a finish line moment. We keep learning, we keep growing. And then perspective, I just want to speak on what you said there because that meant a lot. I really reflected on it in the moment is that if you don't have the right kind of thought process on it, information can come at us. We can just let it go all around us. If someone comes to you and say, hey, I want to help you out, and you don't accept it, we have to be a sponge. Otherwise, we're like a board and it just hits and it goes away. So yeah, when people come in with that right mindset and mentality of I'm going to absorb this and can get better from this in some way, man, now it's you got some power there. And I say power in a way of like you can do something with it, right?
Mhm. Well, and you hit the nail on the head right there, where they say knowledge is power, and knowledge is not power. It's what you do with that knowledge that is the power. You
Right.
have to implement. Just continually being a thinker and learning a lot. I mean, sooner or later, you got to become a doer and actually take that information and knowledge
Yeah.
and apply it to something, and that's where the power comes from. But it's also where wisdom and experience comes from, the actual doing. I mean, you can read and learn all you want, but if you're not going to do anything with it, it's not going to be applicable to the future. You're not gaining the experience and the mental or physical muscle memory.
Right. Yeah. 1,000%. Another mic drop moment right there. I've said that. That's been something I've been voicing on social media a lot over the last couple of years. It's like a lot of people say that knowledge is power, but it's step one. You have to
Mm.
have it, retain it, and now do something with it. I want to kind of continue on with that thought because I mentioned that there's so many benefits in me podcasting, but I know you're also a podcaster yourself. You have Julius Files, which is really cool. It's serving small business owners. Tell us a little bit more about your podcast.
I mean, honestly, I created the podcast because I wanted to put the information out there that I wished had been out there when I actually started my own journey in 2005. Uh, it's morphed into a little bit more than that because it's more about principles of success, both in life and business. But I see small business, I see business being glamorized so much online that I wanted to tell the real story, and the only way that I could do that was to highlight the small business entrepreneurs out there. Because I mean, you see those big businesses and the CEOs of being so glorified, but I'm like, okay, those are a handful of big businesses. Small business makes up 50% of the employment of this nation, but they're small businesses that are employing 5 to 100 people, but all you hear about are the stories, both good and bad, or the companies that are employing hundreds of thousands of people. And generally, the founder's not involved, and they're well capitalized. And that is just not the true story of business. That's not the true story of entrepreneurship. And it does nothing to highlight the legitimate struggles of small business and how the deck is very much stacked against small business. And I mean, you got to go into it wanting to beat the odds, because the odds are very much stacked against you, and that's why it's a lot harder than it looks. I mean, I represented 500 people while dealing with a child with cancer, and I thought that I experienced the hardest thing that I would ever have to in life.
Hmm.
And when I got into entrepreneurship, I realized that I had put myself in a place of business is way harder than doing that. Like, I thought that I would have nerves of steel after being able to survive that part of my life. And boy, was I wrong, because over the last 17 years, I mean, like, this business has almost broke me a couple times, and I'm just being honest about it. It's that hard.
No, man, I appreciate you being transparent. That's what this show is all about. This is the platform to do that. I can relate, man. I actually became an entrepreneur right after I got divorced, and everyone told me I was crazy for doing it because the stability wasn't there in the beginning. And I'm still building it up. It's still something where you never know what 6 months from now can happen because we don't know how business is going. We can control ourselves and try to minimize the roller coaster, but I know what you're saying, where it nearly can break you at moments. And I'll tell you, those that are 15, 20 plus years into their journey and have any level of success, the reason that one of the underlying reasons that they got there is they never quit.
Mhm. No, and I'm gonna be honest. Like that's where I laugh, where I'm like, I'm just a dumb, bullheaded blue collar guy.
You're
I
not going to
never,
stop. Yeah.
no, I never bothered to learn the definition of quit. And there's been a
Right.
couple times in my life where I'm like, I can look back and say, you know what, I went too far down that rabbit hole. I probably should have quit, but I think that my success comes from, like, failure was not an option. Quit is just not
Hmm.
a word in my vocabulary.
Hmm.
But as an entrepreneur, you got to realize, like, the buck stops at you. Everybody knows the buck stops at you. That's a tremendous amount of responsibility. And I mean, it leads
Hmm.
to, you're always the one that has to have the hard conversations. You always have to
Hmm.
make the calls, and you are always the one that is going to be held accountable for those decisions. And if you try and pass the buck or play a victim, well, that's not going to gain you any respect with your coworkers, with the public, with any of your business partners.
Hmm.
And that pressure never goes away. And I mean, and that's part of the real story of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for you, man. The way that you've done this, you really built it from kind of the blood, sweat, and tears, taking things from your past, trying to navigate through it with that knowledge and figuring out what you don't know, and having that mentality. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to put the extra time in. When things get tough, I work harder. I don't shrink up. I work harder. Right. And I respect that. That's that mentality that, I kind of grew up with that as well. My dad worked at the Ford stamping plant, stamping outdoors of cars. So kind
Hmm.
of instilled
That's
that.
hard work. That's hard
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah. I appreciated it then, and I certainly do now. And my dad's no longer with us. He actually passed away with COVID a couple of years ago because his immune system wasn't up for the fight. He's been through a lot, and so I have a lot of respect for him. And now I feel like part of my story is he's someone who it took a while for him to understand what I was doing, because he knew I was successful before I left corporate, and he was proud of that. And then he's like, "What are you doing? You're walking away from a really good thing." So part of my story, my journey is to make him proud now, like to say, "Hey, you know what? I can see why you believed in yourself as much as you do when nobody else saw it." And that's kind of how I feel with your story, is you believed in it at this extreme confident level that nobody else can really understand. Only our hearts and our spirits can kind of understand it, right? And we don't have all the answers, but we're going to keep going until we find them. And I love that. And
Absolutely.
I know we're kind of running out of time. I got one more question. It's not meant to be a curveball. It's to kind of continue this conversation and have you open up a little bit more and kind of put a bow on the episode for us. So I want you to imagine this. You're the author and protagonist in your own life story, and you get to write the ending. And God willing, you continue to live a long, prosperous life. You're looking back at it, and you get to define your legacy. What would that be?
And you know what? Because the next part of my life is, I want to get into public speaking. I want to get into, I want the thought leadership side of it. So it's like, when I think about my legacy, I'm like, stay curious, stay
Mm,
humble, stay stubborn. I mean, again, we come back to that perspective where it's like, I think that I have a very healthy perspective on life. And I've long said quality of life is more important than life itself. And we only get one shot at this time on earth. And your perspective of it, because I mean, I tell all of my people, uh, it's not fair. The world is not fair. Things are not going to, or things are going to happen to you that you're going to not see as fair. That does not matter. I mean, how you're going to absorb that and deal with that in your life. So, I mean, if I die, I want people to look back at me and say, he was a man of his word. That I'm not worried about necessarily being liked by everybody, because I realize that if you're going to take a stand or a position, half the people are going to agree with you, the other half of the people are going to disagree with you. But at the end of the day, your name and your word are all you have in life. And in today's day and age, you're not running from your reputation. It will follow you anywhere and everywhere. I've got this saying or this quote that I tell everybody that is, I might not always win, but it's never smart to bet against me. And the only way that I can actually live with that is I try and operate in high character. I'm willing to do the right thing, even if it means it's going to be painful for me, because I care about my reputation, and I have to be able to live with myself and look at myself in the mirror, which means doing the right thing. And I think that that's a pretty healthy perspective. I think if more people looked at life and their personal reputation that way, that the world would be a better place.
Man, really well said, and hits home for me too. And I got a lot of work to do on myself. A lot of people always are asking about the next 5 years and this and that. And it's like I'm really working on me right now in the moment, being the best version of myself, continuing to improve on character. And that's not just like learning. It's not something you hit this like finish line. Mm-hmm. We always have to keep going with that. There's this thing, it's so true about trust too. And I feel like character and trust, very, very similar, where, it takes years to build up and for people to trust you or someone to trust your brand. And everyone is a personal brand. Like Jasan Julius is a brand. Mike DiCioccio, I'm a brand. And all it takes is one moment where someone could just say, hey, you know what? He's not who we thought he was. So it's hard, and you got to either build it back up.
I do want to say on that, like every time that I've almost burnt my business down, that's where I say, stay humble. I've had to ask for help. And the only reason people stepped up to help me is because I had a reputation of doing the right thing. They knew that I was not going to screw them, that I would do everything I can to rebound from my mistakes, but I was owning my mistakes and I was willing to put in the work. I just needed a little bit of help. So I had to be humble enough to ask for the help, and they had to have enough confidence in my character that I was going to make good on my word.
Yeah. And then it's just like, once you get that little push, you're off and running again. They know that it's a steam engine that's not going to stop. So they just had to kind of get the four wheels back on the track with you, and you're off and running again. So that's great. That's another reason. It's a whole nother episode. We could talk about the importance of who you got around you, because they're going to lift you up. You lift them up when they need you. There's people, I'm sure, come to you when they need help too, because they know you can get the job done and they can trust you because of your high character. This is one of my favorite interviews. I do mean that. Had no idea where we were going to go with this conversation today, and it went in a beautiful place. So thank you so much for being with us. Is there any last words you'd like to say to the audience?
We said so much. Mike, thank you very much for bringing me on. I mean, I love having these types of conversations, but I mean, look, when it all comes down to it in life, because this isn't even about business, the more I read, the more that I actively seek to learn, the better quality of life that I live. So when it comes to the audience, the more that you seek information, the more that you feed your brain. I mean, I remember looking at a time and it was like ignorance is bliss. Well, I'm sorry. Once you open up Pandora's box, there's no going back. Your brain is very powerful, and beautiful things come from it if you feed your brain.
Yeah. So well said, man. So well said. This is fun. I'd like to remain your friend. Let's stay in connection and contact. And looking forward to seeing this continue to grow. And maybe we'll get some locations out here up on the East Coast as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Jasan.
Mike, thank you very much.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you, and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/mikedup. It's spelled MIKED up. Patreon.com/mikedup. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at mikeduppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCioccio, MikeDiCioccio. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.